A single gunshot split the Wyoming stillness, echoing across the vast landscape as Jack Mitchell slumped forward in his saddle. Blood seeped through his fingers where he clutched his right shoulder, the pain sharp enough to blur his vision. 3 days of relentless pursuit had brought him to the edge of consciousness. His loyal paint horse, Bandit, a battle-tested companion from his days with Mosby's Raiders during the war between the states, continued its desperate gallop through the pine-covered hills. "Just a little further, boy," Jack muttered through clenched teeth, the copper taste of blood filling his mouth as he fought to stay awake. The year was 1878, and what had begun as a desperate bid for a fresh start had deteriorated into a fight for survival. Behind him, 4 riders from the Blackwood gang pushed their mounts hard, closing the distance. Their leader, Cole Blackwood, a man with dead eyes and a scar that twisted his mouth into a permanent sneer, was wanted in 3 states with a reputation for never leaving witnesses alive. 3 days ago, his men had raided Jack's cattle camp near the Medicine Bow Mountains, killing Jack's 2 trail companions while they slept. Only Jack's quick reflexes, honed by 4 years of brutal guerrilla warfare, had saved him, allowing him to put bullets in 2 of Blackwood's men before taking a round in his shoulder. The wound wasn't immediately fatal, but after 3 days of hard riding with minimal rest, infection had set in. Fever burned through Jack's body as he scanned the horizon, his Remington Model 1875 revolver, loaded with only 3 remaining bullets, clutched in his bloody hand. Through the swaying trees ahead, Jack spotted a small homestead nestled in a valley, a modest cabin with smoke rising from the chimney. Hope flickered in his chest, quickly tempered by experience. The Wyoming Territory was no place for blind trust. As he approached the clearing around the cabin, a rifle shot kicked up dirt mere feet from Bandit's hooves. The horse reared in surprise, and Jack, weakened by blood loss and fever, lost his grip. The world tilted as he tumbled from the saddle, his body slamming against the hard ground. His vision narrowed to a tunnel as a figure emerged from the cabin, Winchester rifle leveled at his chest. "That's far enough, stranger," a woman's voice called out, clear, steady, and unafraid. Jack tried to raise his hands in surrender, but darkness claimed him before he could respond. The sting of whiskey on raw flesh jolted Jack back to consciousness. A strangled cry escaped his lips as his eyes flew open, finding himself laid out on a simple wooden table. A woman with honey-brown hair stood over him, her hands steady as she cleaned his shoulder wound. "Hold still," she commanded, not bothering to look at his face. "Bullet went clean through, but infection setting in." Jack gritted his teeth as she continued her work. "Much obliged, ma'am, but you should know that you've got men after you," she interrupted, finally meeting his gaze with piercing blue eyes. "I saw the dust from their horses about 2 miles back. They'll be here soon enough." Despite the pain, Jack studied her. She was perhaps 32, with a face that spoke of both refinement and hardship. Not the typical frontier woman. Her movements were efficient, her hands calloused from work, but moving with practiced precision. "Name's Jack Mitchell," he managed, wincing as she pressed a hot cloth against his shoulder. "Those men belong to the Blackwood gang. They hit my cattle drive 3 days back." "Emma Dawson," she replied curtly, reaching for a jar of strong-smelling salve. "And I don't much care about your troubles, Mr. Mitchell. Once I've patched you up, you'll be moving on." Jack's hand shot out, gripping her wrist with surprising strength. "Ma'am, these aren't ordinary outlaws. Cole Blackwood doesn't leave witnesses. If they saw me ride this way—" The sound of approaching horses interrupted him. Emma's head snapped toward the window, her expression hardening. In one fluid motion, she moved to the rifle propped against the wall, checking its load with practiced ease. "Can you shoot?" she asked, already knowing the answer from the calluses on his trigger finger. "3 bullets left in my Remington," Jack confirmed, struggling to sit up. "But in this condition, I can't promise my aim. Emma's jaw tightened as she made a decision. There's a cellar beneath the floorboards in the pantry. Hidden. Get down there and stay quiet. Ma'am, I can't leave you to face. I've been defending this place alone for 2 years. She cut him off, her tone brooking no argument. Now move, before they see you. Against his better judgment, Jack allowed Emma to help him to the hidden cellar entrance. As she lowered him down, he noticed the wedding band still on her finger, though the tanned skin suggested years of wear. Widow? He asked quietly. A shadow crossed her face. 2 years now. Robert was sheriff in Timber Creek. Outlaws ambushed him when he was tracking bank robbers. Before closing the trap door, she handed him his Remington. Don't use it unless absolutely necessary. The sound will carry. Then darkness enveloped him as the floorboards closed above. From his hiding place, Jack listened as hoofbeats approached the cabin. The creak of saddle leather and jingle of spurs told him the riders had dismounted. A heavy knock rattled the cabin door. "Hello there, ma'am," a voice called out, smooth as snake oil and twice as deadly. Jack recognized it immediately. Cole Blackwood himself. "Pardon the intrusion, but we're looking for a man, wounded, riding a paint horse." "Haven't seen anyone fitting that description," Emma's voice replied, steady and unwavering. "Been working my fields all morning. Mind if we look around? His trail leads this direction." "This is private property, mister. I don't recall inviting you to search it." A low chuckle sent ice down Jack's spine. "Ma'am, we're not asking permission. Reynolds, check the barn. Martinez, the outbuildings. Haggerty, with me." Heavy boots scraped across the porch, then the cabin floor. Jack tightened his grip on the Remington, every muscle tense despite his weakened state. Above, he heard Emma moving about, her footsteps deliberate. "Nice place," Blackwood commented. "Unusual to see a woman running a homestead alone. Where's your husband?" "Dead," Emma replied flatly. 2 years now. "My condolences. Dangerous country for a woman alone. I manage." The floorboards creaked directly overhead. Jack held his breath as Blackwood's boots stopped just inches from the hidden trap door. "That's your paint horse in the barn?" Blackwood asked suddenly. "It is," Emma answered without hesitation. "Bought him off a trader passing through last month." "Interesting. Looks an awful lot like the one our fugitive was riding." "Paints aren't uncommon, mister." A sudden crash suggested Blackwood had overturned something. "I don't appreciate being lied to, Mrs. Dawson." Jack's blood ran cold. How did Blackwood know her name? "Search every inch," Blackwood commanded. "He's here somewhere. And Mrs. Dawson is going to tell us where, aren't you, Emma?" The sound of a slap echoed through the floorboards. Jack's finger tensed on the trigger, but he remembered Emma's warning. 3 bullets against 4 men were poor odds, especially in his condition. "Boss!" a voice called from outside. "Found blood on the ground near the east side. Trail leads toward the creek, then disappears." Blackwood's boots moved away from the trap door. "Looks like your visitor tried to throw us off. Smart, but not smart enough." "I told you I haven't seen anyone," Emma insisted, her voice tighter now. "We'll see. Boys, let's check the creek. If we don't find him there, we'll come back for a more thorough conversation with Mrs. Dawson." The heavy footsteps receded, followed by the sound of horses galloping away. Still, Jack waited, counting out a full 5 minutes before the trap door lifted, revealing Emma's face. "They're gone," she whispered. "But they'll be back. That was too easy." Jack climbed out, his legs unsteady. "You need to leave. Now. Pack what you can carry and go." Emma's expression hardened. "This is my home, Mr. Mitchell. I don't abandon it." "That man knew your name without you giving it," Jack said, leaning against the wall for support. "That's not coincidence." Emma froze, the implication sinking in. "How would he—" "Let me see the picture of your husband," Jack requested suddenly, noticing a framed photograph on a small table. Emma hesitated, then handed him the silver frame. Jack studied the image of a stern-faced man in a lawman's badge. His eyes narrowed as he examined the background of the photograph. A group of men standing outside the Timber Creek courthouse. Among them, a younger, clean-shaven face that Jack recognized instantly. "Your husband was Sheriff Dawson of Timber Creek," Jack confirmed, pointing to a figure in the photograph. "And this man standing next to him is Cole Blackwood, before he became an outlaw." Emma snatched back the photograph, staring in disbelief. "That's impossible. Robert never mentioned knowing him." "There's more," Jack said gravely. "I've been hearing rumors about Blackwood's gang for months. Word is they've got connections inside law enforcement. Someone feeding them information about gold shipments, payrolls. You think Robert was involved?" Emma's voice was dangerous, her hand moving instinctively toward her rifle. "No," Jack said quickly. "I think he discovered the connection, and it got him killed." Emma stared at the photograph, emotions warring on her face. After Robert died, Judge Hamilton, his mentor and the senior magistrate in Timber Creek, tried to investigate, said things didn't add up, but the new sheriff, a man named Willis, shut it down. Said there wasn't enough evidence. "Willis," Jack repeated, the name triggering a memory. "Tall fellow? Scar across his chin?" Emma's head snapped up. "You know him." "Saw him riding with Blackwood's gang about a month ago in Colorado. Didn't realize he was a lawman." Emma's face paled, then flushed with anger. "That backstabbing son of a—" "It explains a lot," Jack interrupted. "Why the case went cold. Why Blackwood knows who you are. But why come after me now, 2 years later?" Jack checked the load in his Remington one last time. "There's only one reason outlaws risk confronting witnesses long after a crime. They're afraid you know something that could hurt them." Emma shook her head. "Robert never told me anything about his investigations." "Maybe not directly," Jack suggested, "but perhaps there's something in his possessions, his papers, something you have without realizing its importance." A look of realization dawned on Emma's face. "His journal. Robert kept detailed notes on all his cases. I brought it with me when I left Timber Creek." She hurried to a trunk in the corner, digging through its contents until she produced a leather-bound book. Together, they pored over the sheriff's neat handwriting by lamplight, scanning entries from the weeks before his death. "There," Jack pointed to an entry dated just 3 days before the ambush. "He mentions a witness named Martinez who could connect the bank robbery to someone inside Timber Creek. Says he was meeting him the next day to get a sworn statement." "Martinez," Emma repeated. "One of Blackwood's men is named Martinez." Jack nodded grimly. "My guess is that Martinez was working with your husband, possibly an informant. Something went wrong. And now Blackwood is tying up loose ends," Emma concluded, her voice hardening. "Starting with me and this journal." Jack flipped to the final entries, reading Robert Dawson's last words. "Your husband suspected a major gold shipment was the target. $50,000 coming through from the mining operations in the mountains." "Judge Hamilton," Emma whispered. "He's the only other person who knew Robert was investigating corruption. If Blackwood knows about me—" Jack's expression darkened. "The judge could be in danger too." Dawn broke with no sign of Blackwood's return. Jack and Emma had worked through the night, preparing defenses and planning their strategy. With his military experience and her knowledge of the surrounding terrain, they'd created a series of traps and defensive positions. "They'll come from the south," Jack said, studying the approaches through a spyglass. "It offers the best cover and puts the sun at their backs." Emma nodded, checking the Winchester's action one last time. "The dynamite from the mining supplies is set in the ravine. If they take that route, we can narrow their numbers." Jack couldn't help but admire her calm efficiency. Most women, most men for that matter, would have broken under the strain, but Emma Dawson had the steel of a frontier spirit tempered by personal tragedy. "When this is over," he said suddenly, "what will you do?" Emma paused, seemingly surprised by the question. I haven't thought beyond survival, Mr. Mitchell. Jack, he corrected. After sharing preparation for battle, I think we're past formalities. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. Very well, Jack. I suppose I'll rebuild whatever damage is done to my home and continue on. And you? I still have the deed to land near Cottonwood Valley. Not much, but enough to start again if I can acquire some breeding stock. Near Timber Creek, Emma noted. Dangerous territory if Blackwood has allies there. All the more reason to end this properly. Their conversation was cut short by the distant sound of hoofbeats, many more than 4. Jack's expression darkened as he counted through the spyglass. 8 riders, he reported. Blackwood's called in reinforcements. As expected, Emma replied, taking position behind a reinforced window. Remember, let them get close to the ravine before triggering the dynamite. Jack nodded, moving to his own position on the cabin's roof, hidden behind the stone chimney with a clear view of the approach. As Blackwood's men drew nearer, something caught his attention. A 9th rider, bound and slumped over his saddle. They have a prisoner, Jack hissed down to Emma. Older man, well-dressed, white hair, distinguished-looking. Emma risked a glance through her own spyglass, her face draining of color. That's Judge Hamilton. He's been like a father to me since my own past. He was Robert's mentor and closest friend, the only man in Timber Creek who believed foul play was involved in Robert's death. The situation had just complicated exponentially. Their carefully laid plans now risked the life of an innocent man, one with deep connections to Emma's past. Hold position, Jack ordered, mind racing through alternatives. Let them approach. Blackwood led his men toward the cabin, the bound judge dragged roughly from his horse and forced to walk ahead of the group, a human shield against ambush. Mrs. Dawson, Blackwood called out, stopping just beyond effective rifle range. I believe you and Judge Hamilton are well acquainted. He's eager to discuss your late husband's affairs with you. The judge, his face bruised and bloody, looked up at the cabin with terrified eyes. What do you want, Blackwood? Emma called back, her voice steady despite the unexpected complication. Just a simple exchange. The judge's life for your husband's journal. I know you have it. Jack and Emma exchanged looks, their suspicions confirmed, but their options severely limited. How do I know you'll let him go? Emma demanded. Blackwood's laugh carried across the clearing. You don't, but I promise he dies slow if you refuse. I need time to think, Emma stalled. You have 1 minute, Blackwood replied coldly. Then I start removing the judge's fingers. Jack's mind raced. The dynamite in the ravine was now useless, with the outlaws stopped short of its position. 8 armed men against their 2, with a hostage in the middle, presented nearly impossible odds. Then he saw it. Martinez, the man from Robert's journal, hanging back from the others, his expression troubled. His gaze kept shifting between the judge and the cabin, guilt written across his features. Emma, Jack whispered urgently, I need a distraction. When I give the signal, fire 2 shots over their heads, not at them, just enough to scatter them momentarily. What are you planning? Something stupid, Jack admitted, moving toward the back of the cabin, but it's our only chance. Slipping down through a rear window, Jack circled wide through the trees, using the skills that had kept him alive through years of war. His fever burned and his shoulder throbbed, but adrenaline carried him forward. Reaching a position behind the outlaws, he waited for his moment. Time's up, Mrs. Dawson, Blackwood shouted, drawing a knife and grabbing the judge's hand. Now, Jack whispered into the wind, trusting Emma would act on instinct. 2 rifle shots cracked through the air, sending the outlaws diving for cover. In the confusion, Jack lunged forward, tackling Martinez from behind and dragging him into the trees with a hand clamped over his mouth. You were Sheriff Dawson's informant, Jack hissed in the man's ear. You're going to help us, or you'll hang alongside Blackwood when this is over." Martinez's eyes widened in fear and recognition. "I never wanted the sheriff dead," he whispered hoarsely. "I rode with Blackwood for years, but when he started killing innocent people, I couldn't stomach it. Sheriff Dawson offered me protection in exchange for information." "What happened?" Jack demanded, maintaining his grip on the man. "Blackwood found out. Someone tipped him off. Sheriff Willis. He was in on it from the beginning." Martinez's voice was thick with regret. "I was supposed to meet Dawson that night with proof of Willis's involvement, but Blackwood intercepted me, made me watch as they ambushed the sheriff. And you've been riding with him since? Helping him kill more people?" Jack's disgust was evident. Martinez shook his head. "I've been looking for a way out, but Blackwood doesn't let people leave." His eyes darted toward the cabin. "He's planning something big. The gold shipment coming through Timber Creek next week. Nearly $50,000. Willis has arranged to have minimal security." Jack's mind worked quickly. "Here's what we're going to do." The showdown at Emma's homestead ended not with the bloody battle they had anticipated, but with a strategic victory that none could have predicted. Using Martinez as both hostage and ally, Jack created a diversion that allowed Emma to target Blackwood himself with a precise shot from the cabin window. A bullet to the shoulder that took him out of the fight. The confusion that followed let Judge Hamilton break free and run for the cabin, while Jack used his 3 remaining bullets to maximum effect, taking down Haggerty and wounding Reynolds. Martinez, seizing his chance for redemption, turned on his former comrades, shooting one of them before taking a bullet to the leg. When the dust settled, 3 of Blackwood's men lay dead, 2 were wounded, and the others had fled. Blackwood himself, bleeding heavily from Emma's shot, was bound and under guard, finally facing justice for the murder of Sheriff Robert Dawson. Judge Hamilton, despite his ordeal, insisted on riding immediately for Timber Creek to organize a proper posse. "Willis must not be warned," he declared, his judicial dignity returning despite his bruised face. "We'll need to move quickly." "I'm coming with you," Emma said firmly, already packing ammunition. "Robert deserves justice, and I mean to see it done." Jack, his shoulder freshly bandaged but his determination undiminished, nodded. "We'll bring Martinez. His testimony is crucial." Armed with Robert Dawson's journal, Martinez's confession, and a burning desire for justice, they rode for Timber Creek. The small frontier town of 200 souls had no idea its corrupt sheriff was about to face a reckoning. They arrived as evening fell, the town's main street quiet as most citizens had retired to homes or saloons. Judge Hamilton led them directly to the home of Dr. Wheeler, a man he trusted implicitly. "My God, Hamilton," the doctor exclaimed upon opening his door. "We thought you'd been taken by bandits." "I was," the judge confirmed grimly, "by Sheriff Willis's associates." Inside the doctor's house, they laid out their evidence and formulated a plan. Word was quietly spread to trusted townspeople, veterans of the war, shopkeepers with deep roots in the community, ranchers who had respected Sheriff Dawson. By midnight, a force of 20 men had assembled. "Willis keeps 2 deputies on night duty at the jail," Dr. Wheeler explained, "both hired after Dawson's death, both strangers to these parts." Jack, his military experience making him the natural tactical leader, divided their forces. "We take the jail first, then secure the sheriff's house before he's alerted. Quick and quiet." The operation went smoothly until they reached Willis's house on the edge of town. Whether tipped off or simply paranoid, the corrupt sheriff was waiting. Gunfire erupted from the darkened windows, forcing Jack and his men to take cover. "Willis!" Judge Hamilton called out during a lull in the shooting. "You're surrounded by 20 men. Surrender now and face a proper trial." "Go to hell," came the reply, followed by more gunshots. The siege lasted nearly an hour, with Willis putting up a desperate defense. When the firing finally stopped, they entered the house cautiously to find Sheriff Willis dead by his own hand, a bullet to the temple rather than face justice. In his desk, they found damning evidence: coded messages about gold shipments, payment records, and a list of names that connected him not just to Blackwood, but to a wider network of corruption that stretched to larger towns. "It goes deeper than we thought," Judge Hamilton said grimly, examining the documents. "This will take months to unravel." By dawn, Timber Creek had awakened to the news that their sheriff had been a traitor, that Judge Hamilton had been rescued, and that Emma Dawson, widow of their beloved Sheriff Robert, had returned with evidence that would finally bring justice. In the aftermath, Judge Hamilton, his position and authority restored, offered Jack a temporary position as Timber Creek's acting sheriff. "This town needs a man like you, Mitchell," the judge insisted. "Someone who understands both law and justice aren't always the same thing. Just until we sort through this mess." Jack glanced at Emma, standing quietly nearby. "I'll stay until Blackwood's gang is rounded up and the gold shipment is secured. Then I have other plans." The judge nodded, understanding passing between the men. "The reward for bringing in Blackwood is substantial. Should help with establishing your ranch in Cottonwood Valley." Later, as Jack settled into the sheriff's office, a position he had never sought but now accepted as necessary, Emma found him reviewing the town's defenses. "Blackwood still has men out there," she said, placing a cup of coffee before him. "They'll try to rescue him, or worse, continue with the gold robbery." "I'm counting on it," Jack replied, studying the map of the area. "We'll be ready." For a week, Jack drilled the townsmen in defensive tactics, established lookouts, and reinforced the jail where Blackwood awaited transport to the territorial prison. The gold shipment was due in 3 days, and tension mounted with each passing hour. When Blackwood's remaining men made their move, a night assault on the jail with 8 riders, Jack was waiting. The ensuing gun battle lit up Timber Creek's main street with muzzle flashes and echoing gunfire. 3 townsmen fell wounded, but not a single outlaw escaped. By morning, the threat of the Blackwood gang had been permanently eliminated. 2 days later, the gold shipment passed through Timber Creek without incident, heavily guarded by both Jack's volunteers and federal marshals summoned by Judge Hamilton. With his promise fulfilled and Blackwood on his way to prison, Jack turned in his temporary badge. The judge, true to his word, ensured Jack received the substantial reward for Blackwood's capture. "What will you do now?" the judge asked during their final meeting. "That land in Cottonwood Valley won't develop itself," Jack replied, thinking of the fertile acres he'd purchased sight unseen before losing his cattle. "Time I started building something that lasts." "Alone?" the judge inquired, his eyes twinkling with a knowledge beyond his years. Jack didn't answer directly. Instead, he tipped his hat and headed for Emma's temporary lodging at the town's small hotel. He found her packing her few belongings, her face peaceful in a way it hadn't been since they'd met. "I sold my homestead," she announced without preamble. "Too many memories now after everything." Jack leaned against the doorframe. "Any thoughts on where you'll go?" "Judge Hamilton offered me a position as town clerk," she said, folding a dress carefully. "Says Timber Creek needs honest people to rebuild what Willis corrupted." "It's a good offer," Jack acknowledged, disappointment threading through him despite his efforts to hide it. "But I declined," Emma continued, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "I hear Cottonwood Valley has good water and decent grazing, and I still have 6 head of cattle that need land." Jack's heart quickened. It's rough country, lots of work to make it viable. "I'm not afraid of work, Mr. Mitchell, as you may have noticed." She moved closer, her blue eyes meeting his directly. "And I believe we'd make good partners, in all ways." Jack held her gaze, understanding her meaning clearly. "Partners, then," he said softly, extending his hand. "In all ways." Emma took his hand, but instead of shaking it, she held it firmly. "I loved Robert, and I always will. But he's been gone 2 years. And in the past week, I've felt more alive than I have since he died. I know something about starting over, Jack replied, his voice rough with emotion. And I know it's easier with the right person beside you. 3 months later, Jack stood on the porch of their newly completed cabin overlooking Cottonwood Valley. Spring had transformed the landscape, painting the hills green and filling the creek with fresh snowmelt. The foundation for a barn had been laid, and a corral already housed 15 horses, the beginning of the breeding program he'd dreamed of since losing his Texas ranch. The cattle herd had grown to 20 head with the purchase of a prime bull, and Emma had planted a vegetable garden that promised summer bounty. Their partnership, begun in blood and gunfire, had blossomed into something neither had expected to find again. Judge Hamilton had visited twice, bringing news from Timber Creek and performing a simple wedding ceremony on his second visit, with Dr. Wheeler and his wife as witnesses. The gold ring on Emma's finger now matched the simple band Jack wore, symbols of a commitment built on mutual respect and shared purpose. Emma emerged from the cabin, wiping her hands on her apron. "Supper's ready," she announced. "Venison stew and fresh bread." Jack nodded, taking one last look at the sunset painting the valley in gold and crimson. "Everything I hoped it would be," he said, not just referring to the land. After supper, they sat on the porch, as had become their custom, watching night claim the valley. Jack's shoulder had healed well, though it still ached when rain approached. Judge Hamilton sent word that Blackwood's trial is set for next month, Emma said, breaking the comfortable silence. "They want us both to testify." "We'll go," Jack decided. "See it through to the end." Emma reached over, taking his hand in hers, "and then put it behind us for good." Jack squeezed her hand gently. "Robert would be proud of what you've done, seeing justice served, building something new." "He would have liked you," Emma replied softly. "Stubborn as you are," Jack chuckled. High praise coming from the most stubborn woman in the Wyoming Territory. As darkness settled over the valley, Jack felt the weight of years of wandering and survival lift from his shoulders. For the first time since the war, he had found purpose beyond merely staying alive. That night, as exhaustion from a day of honest labor pulled him towards sleep, Emma's voice came softly through the darkness of their cabin. "You're safe now, Jack," she whispered, echoing the words she'd spoken when they first met, when he'd been fighting to stay conscious with outlaws on his trail. Sleep. And for the first time in years, Jack Mitchell, former soldier, drifter, survivor, now rancher and husband, slept without one hand on his gun, having finally found a place and a person worth calling home.